wedding that cost nearly $7 million. Elton John was invited to perform for exactly 45 minutes, for a fee that could buy a mansion in Malibu. And more than 20 U.S. Secret Service agents quietly appeared, just to protect the bride, not a movie star, not a princess. It was Eve Jobs, the daughter of the legendary Steve Jobs. In an ancient English village where Apple touched royalty, a wedding took place quietly yet powerfully. No lights, no media. But every detail was steeped in legacy and ambition. Join us as we uncover this extravagant and secretive love story, where the final twist will leave you speechless. Steve Jobs and the wedding that shook the world, when technology meets royalty. In the peaceful countryside of England, where cobblestone roads wind through misty fields and the bells of ancient churches ring out as if echoing from centuries past, a wedding is taking place. But this is not the kind of wedding you see on the cover of a magazine. It's not just the union of two people. It's a symbol of love, heritage, and the convergence of two worlds that seemed impossible to touch. The bride is Eve Jobs, the youngest daughter of tech legend Steve Jobs. The groom is Harry Charles, an Olympic equestrian and the son of legendary rider Peter Charles. They met at European equestrian competitions, where horses galloped, white coats fluttered, and applause echoed in the wind. Love came quietly, discreetly, like how they grew up in two worlds constantly under the gaze of millions. But have you ever wondered if love between a tech princess and a sports prince could write a fairy tale in real life? And then the day arrived, Saturday, July 26, 2025. The entire Cotswolds seemed to hold its breath. The streets around Charlbury Village were suddenly packed with dark-tinted SUVs. Nearly 20 U.S. Secret Service agents appeared around the bullpub, not to protect a head of state, but to escort a special guest, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. The locals whispered in amazement, "Is this a wedding or a global summit?" The official wedding took place at St. Michael and All Angels, a 12th century church. Hundreds of red roses covered the aisle. 101 candles flickered on the stone walls. Persian rugs were laid out, and the air seemed to stand still. Eve walked in wearing a white dress with no logo. No gold. No unnecessary details. Just pure beauty, just like her. Harry stood at the end of the aisle, saying nothing. But his eyes, at that moment, held a kingdom of trust. Have you ever witnessed a moment when time seemed to stand still? A brief second, but enough to start a lifetime. Rumor has it that the party took place at Estelle Manor, an old mansion rented out for the entire week. Amidst crystal candles, Elton John stepped out and performed Your Song, a song that had been the wedding song for millions of couples. But here, amidst fireworks, champagne, and symbols of global power, each note rang out like a sacred blessing. Elton only sang for 45 minutes. But his fee, according to British newspapers, reached $1.2 million. No one asked questions, because everyone understood every note had been etched into the memories of those present. The international press was abuzz. The Times called it a $1 million wedding organized like a military campaign, with both the FBI and Secret Service in attendance. The New York Post called it a fairy tale wedding worth $6.7 million. From Davos to the Met Gala, few places have gathered so many big names: Jennifer Gates, the daughter of billionaire Bill Gates; Jessica Springsteen, the daughter of Bruce Springsteen; Princess Beatrice, a member of the British royal family; and Joni Ive, the former Apple design chief, all raising their glasses under the Cotswold sky. In that moment, technology, sports, fashion, politics, and royalty all blended together like an unnamed symphony. Have you ever wondered, where do the elite truly gather? In Davos, in Cannes, or at a wedding where wedding vows are exchanged amid ancient oak trees and silver candles? But beyond all the opulence, what remains isn't the cost. It's an unanswered question. Is this just a wedding? Or is it a declaration of a new world, where tradition meets modernity, where power isn't measured by badges or logos, but by harmony. Eve didn't invent any great products, but she designed her own life. She didn't choose a wedding at a French castle or a Dubai hotel. She chose a moss-covered church in the Cotswolds. She didn't choose a Dior or Chanel dress. She chose a dress no one knows the name of. If you were her, what would you choose? A quiet, anonymous love, or a wedding that leaves the world breathless? And perhaps the most beautiful part of this entire story isn't the price tag or the guest list. It's the truth that true love still exists in a surreal world. Dreams are still written in capital letters, no editing required. Do you think true love can survive in the spotlight of the whole world? Leave a comment below. But to understand the meaning of this wedding, we need to look back at the bride herself, Eve Jobs, who chose to live her life in a way that was completely different from her father's legacy. Eve Jobs, the true story Steve Jobs never got to tell. As Steve Jobs' youngest child, Eve could have inherited everything: the stage, the speeches, the multi-billion-dollar corporation. But when the world was expecting a tech goddess heiress, Eve chose the opposite. She chose to ride horses. While her father was giving a speech at an Apple conference, Eve was sitting next to a white horse in Florida, brushing its mane. Perhaps from a young age, she understood that not everyone born into the spotlight wants to be a spotlight. When her father passed away, Eve was only 13 years old. An empire fell silent. The media turned their attention to her, waiting for the heir to the Apple legacy. But she did not speak, did not appear. She chose Stanford, studying the connection between technology and society, no coding, no startups. While her friends were founding startups, Eve quietly competed in horseback riding and made it into the top 5 worldwide under 25. She won medals, but no press conferences, no media. She won and then stepped back, as if success didn't need to be proven. No one thought she'd ever venture into fashion. But Glossier, Louis Vuitton, and Japanese Vogue all chose her. Not for her followers, not for her Apple fame, but because she has an aura that makes people look. She doesn't try to draw attention, yet she stands out among all the glitter. She doesn't build an image. She just lives. Then people began to understand behind that calm exterior lies a real empire. A penthouse in San Francisco worth $85 million, where all the walls are made of glass. A horse riding estate in Geneva, Switzerland, where each horse is cared for by a dedicated team. Horses like Nebula, Stardust, and Orion, valued between $500,000 and $2 million, aren't for show but companions. Her $120 million yacht, Aurelia, is docked in Monaco, standing out with its turquoise color and helicopter landing pad. Private parties have hosted Elon Musk, Gigi Hadid, and a Middle Eastern prince. In the main cabin, a Damien Hirst painting hangs between 2 Steinway pianos, one white, one black, like a condensed version of Eve herself, soft yet cold. No one knows how much she truly owns. Analysts estimate Eve's net worth exceeds $850 million, not including the undisclosed inheritance from Steve Jobs. But she has never confirmed it, never appeared on a talk show, and never spoken once about Apple. At a private party in St. Tropez, someone once asked, "Why don't you ever talk about Apple?" Eve took a sip of wine and replied, "Ownership doesn't define value. Being aware of what you own, that's true power." No one asked her to inherit, and she didn't need to refuse. She simply chose to live differently, quietly, confidently, without needing anyone's approval. If you had a name big enough to define your whole life, would you chase after it? Or would you quietly rewrite your life in your own way? And then, on the other side of the globe, there was another young man quietly writing his own journey, a knight with a noble spirit and a heart of steel, Harry Charles. Harry Charles, the story of a quiet knight who reached the top. On the misty fields of Hampshire, where cold winds blow through wet grass, a boy begins his day not with an iPad or video games, but with reins. He is Harry Charles, son of Olympic legend Peter Charles. Born into privilege, Harry did not choose to live in the spotlight. Instead of inheriting a sporting throne, he chose to forge his own path, without the spotlight or special privileges. As he grew up, he had no media debut or high-profile promotional campaigns. Only sweat, mud, and quiet European junior championships marked his early years. It wasn't until 2021 that everything changed. At the London International Horse Show, Harry stunned the crowd by winning 3 consecutive events with 3 high-priced horses, Romeo 88, Stardust, and Borsato, each valued between $300,000 and over $1 million. But this victory was no accident. It was the result of thousands of hours of training, a £20 million horse training center, and a team of experts, from veterinarians and nutritionists to a crew that transports horses by private jet. From a rural boy, Harry has become the global ambassador for Rolex, a luxury brand where every watch is a statement of prestige. In 2022, he was chosen as the youngest testimony of the brand, owning limited edition Rolex watches, not for sale but only given to those truly deserving. However, what makes Harry special isn't material possessions. It's his lifestyle, mornings spent with horses in muddy stables, evenings at the St. Tropez Gala. He lives between 2 worlds, not to show off, but because they are 2 genuine parts of himself, a rider who rides with his heart, and a man who lives with courage. Then came the 2024 Paris Olympics. Fall. A broken arm. A painful decision, withdraw to preserve the future, or continue to keep his promise to himself. Harry chose to continue. He competed as if he had never been injured, and won the gold medal. In that moment, no one spoke of Peter Charles anymore. Only Harry, the man who turned pain into glory. He doesn't talk much about his wealth. But behind his calm demeanor lies a collection of Rolex watches worth millions, an expensive training facility, and a schedule that takes him to the most luxurious destinations in Europe. So who is truly wealthy? The one with the most, or the one who understands the true value of what they hold? And then, like a cinematic conclusion to this journey, by the end of 2025, Harry will marry Eve Jobs, a female heiress who also shuns the spotlight, choosing horses, freedom, and a private life. They met not through fame, but through horses, where no one asks who you are, only how you ride. And who knows, maybe true love only begins when 2 children dare to step out of their father's shadows, to choose each other, not for their wealth, but for their trust. But this story is not just about 2 people. It is about 2 families, 2 worlds, gradually converging in a way no one could have imagined. 2 families, 2 worlds, a fateful encounter. On the windy hills of Palo Alto, there is a villa hidden among nature, as if wanting to escape the gaze of the world. There are no golden gates, no guards, no imposing stone statues. Only light, filtering through each pane of glass, and a profound silence, quietly recounting the story of a man who changed the world with an iPhone. And it was there, after his passing in 2011, that his widow, Lorraine Powell Jobs, continued to live. Not in sorrow, but quietly writing the next chapter of an empire. A chapter without a stage, without a keynote speech, without flashbulbs. Lorraine holds millions of shares in Apple and Disney, with an estimated net worth of $13 billion to $15 billion. She runs the Emerson Collective, which combines investment and social activism in line with Steve's philosophy. But what sets her apart isn't her wealth, it's how she uses it. No flashy yachts, no mansions in the Maldives. She lives in the $40 million home Steve designed in Woodside, inspired by Japanese meditation. She also owns a penthouse overlooking Central Park and a fleet of Tesla test vehicles never released to the public. In her archives are Leonardo da Vinci's manuscripts and paintings worth millions of dollars. They are not hung in plain sight. but carefully stored away, like memories that no one has the right to touch. So if wealth is not used to show off, then what is it for? On the other side of the globe, another family is preserving an empire, not with technology, but with tradition. The Charles family, with 3 generations devoted to equestrian sports, has built a fortune worth tens of millions of dollars, not to get rich, but to preserve a tradition that runs in their blood. At the heart of this empire is a $30 million horse training facility located on 120 acres of land. The stables are designed to royal standards with climate control and natural lighting. The main training arena is covered with a special type of sand imported from southern France, specifically used for world championships, Powell, to protect the legs of horses worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. This is not just a farm, it is a machine that carries on a tradition, operated with precision and pride. But horses are only part of the picture. In the private garage, the Charles family owns a fleet of Land Rover Defenders with fully customized British-made interiors, and a Bentley Bentayga customized to a value of $300,000, reserved exclusively for weekend horseback riding events. In the gallery hidden behind the library lies a collection of one-of-a-kind Rolex watches, including one valued at $1.2 million. A personal gift from the company to Peter Charles after his 2012 Olympic medal. These watches have never appeared on an auction floor. They are not for sale. And then the question arises, if their children choose a different path, what will become of that wealth? No one forced Eve Jobs to become a tech goddess. Nor did anyone force the next generation of the Charles family to compete in horse racing. At the Jobs household, Lorraine often said, "True freedom only has meaning when you have a place to return to." At the Charles household, the lesson was no tradition survives if the next generation is too busy worrying about survival. Neither family viewed their wealth as a crown. They saw it as an umbrella, something to open when the storm came. If one day their children fell, their wealth would not stand up in their place, but it would buy them time to heal. If one day they lost their way, their wealth would not make decisions for them, but it would keep the light shining in the dark. And perhaps that is why wealth truly has value, not because it makes us stronger, but because it helps us not to collapse, not to blind the world, but to pave the way for a path of our own, not to hold on to glory, but to protect the silence that the modern world is always trying to shatter. What about you? If you had a huge fortune, would you use it to control or to protect? Would you force your children to follow in your footsteps? Or would you clear a new piece of land so they could draw their own map with their own hands? This isn't just a story about wealth, it's a quiet reminder of how we choose to carry legacy. Lorraine Powell Jobs and the Charles family show us that true wealth isn't about golden gates or lavish headlines. It's about protection. About giving the next generation space to fall, to get back up, and to choose their own way forward. In a world that constantly demands noise and spectacle, they chose silence. Not because they had nothing to prove, but because they understood the real strength lies in what you don't need to say. Their fortune wasn't a crown to wear, but a shelter to offer, something to open when the storm hits. And maybe, just maybe, that's the truest power of all, not wealth that dazzles, but wealth that waits quietly, patiently until it's needed most. Because in the end, legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what lives on even in your absence. It's not about building empires everyone can see. It's about building safety nets no one notices until they catch someone who's falling. A wedding may just be a ceremony between two people. But when it's the daughter of Steve Jobs, the man who redefined the world, everything becomes symbolic. No need for a grand announcement. No need to stand on a tech stage. Eve Jobs chose to redefine power through silence, through her own choices, and through a wedding that left the world speechless. What do you think? Is this simply a wedding, or a silent declaration of a world where power is being rewritten in a completely different form? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this portrait of silent power. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more stories about the wealthiest, most powerful, and most mysterious people in the world. Thank you for watching.